Music there from Laura Muvula. The song is called Green Garden. It's 8:42, and this is the Tuesday morning show on member supported KAXE. I'm Heidi Holton with John Latimer. Tuesdays, we talk nature and conservation. We're beginning today a new series, thanks to our producer Mark Jacobs, on the decline of pollinators. Our guests today, Mark Jacobs and Rebecca Gutierrez Moreno. She is the state pollinator coordinator with the Environmental Quality Board. Welcome to you both. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us. Very
Good
excited
morning.
for this conversation.
Yeah, thank you. So, Rebecca, we want to find out about what your job is, but first, let's talk about what you mean by pollinators.
Thank you. So pollinators are animals or, animals that help or assist plants in the reproductive cycles. So usually, there are different types of plants. Some plants have self-pollination, so they don't really require pollinators. There are plants that need that third party to carry pollen from male flowers to female flowers, and they wouldn't be able to produce fruit if it was not for the help of those animals. And there can be insects that do that. There's reptiles that do that, birds, bats even, and there are also plants that do both, kind of like have also self-pollination, but also have some assistance from other animals that help them reproduce. So that's in general what we define as pollinators.
It's a pretty important job, the pollinators. Yours as well, although I have to admire your title, the pollinator coordinator. That's very nice.
I
I
love
wish,
it.
I wish I had that kind. I'm the staff phenologist, which is pretty important, but not a pollinator coordinator. That's very nice. Glad to have you aboard this morning,
Thank
Rebecca.
you.
So tell us about your role with EQB and the international or interagency pollinator protection team.
Yeah. So EQB is the Environmental Quality Board, and EQB works with some programs and projects that require that interagency coordination. So my role, I lead and coordinate the interagency pollinator protection team. So this is a team that is comprised of 10 state agencies, staff from states 10 state agencies, and we work together to develop strategy to help pollinators in the state. So things that the state can do with the resources we have, and we also think about strategy on how to involve the public and how to help the public, care about this subject. And in addition to that, we also work to strengthen interagency relationships and try to help each other and not duplicate efforts. So, like, I'm not talking about like sharing necessarily resources, but talking about um, things that we can do together and figure out where are those places where we can really optimize our resources and amplify our message. So like we would use each other's communications, the help of each other's communication staffs to get messages across, different places. But we also work together to with the expertise of each agency that participates on this to design, for example, native seed mixes for restoration projects, or to think about ways in which we can help pollinators not be directly affected by pesticide drift and other activities human activities that we do. So those are some examples of things and activities that we do together. And every year we produce a report. So we have our IPPT annual report that we put out. It's all on the EQB pollinator website, and we really, put a lot of effort on those reports to help people understand pollinators, how are Minnesota's pollinators doing. So we do a lot of work with other partners that are outside state agencies as well. And it's one of our goals to strengthen those extra agency relationships as well.
So, how are pollinators in Minnesota? How are they doing?
Yeah, so that's not an easy answer. I could say good, bad. There's not, because pollinators are so diverse. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of these different species. We are focused mainly on insect pollinators, which is not an easy task either, even if we're just focusing on that, not birds or reptiles or other things like insect pollinators, where there has been more reports of insect declines and in general, a decline on their numbers. However, it's different to talk about honeybees that are a managed pollinator than to talk about the rusty patch bumblebee, which is a wild pollinator that doesn't have a manager, right? It doesn't have someone taking care of them. So there is a huge knowledge gap about each species and how they're doing. There's more efforts nowadays. So the DNR, the Department of Natural Resources, in collaboration with the Bee Lab, they've wrapped up the Minnesota Biological Survey, and we got about 490 species of bees in Minnesota. So that's just talking about the diversity of bees. We're not talking about butterflies, we're not talking about beetles, even mosquitoes. Some mosquitoes can be pollinators as well. So this is just about bees, and we see the large diversity of native bees that we have in our state. So figuring out ways in to help them all, there are general things that we can do, for example, about habitat and in increasing flower resources. That would benefit, and not only pollinators but other wildlife as well, because everything's connected. So in general, I can tell you, um, if we think about insect pollinators, it's a complicated thing to say they're doing great or they're doing bad. There's some species that are doing better than others, that are more commonly distributed and seem to be doing okay. But there's others that definitely are not doing well. There's some species that haven't been recorded in the state for the longest time. We cannot say for sure that they have disappeared, but there's needs to be more efforts to survey and monitor in their common habitats. Yeah.
It occurs to me if you could persuade the food producers to somehow label or color their product to let people know that without pollinators you would not be eating this, it would make people much more aware of how important they are, which would hopefully make your job easier because if as people become more aware, they begin to understand that that all the
Yeah.
little critters out there have a part to play.
That's a great idea. We are actually working right now on a action framework. So basically figuring out ways in which the state, the legislature, and the general public can work together to help pollinators. And we're, right now still in the period of receiving public input on the framework, and we're searching precisely on those great ideas that people can have and ways in which we can raise awareness about this and encourage people to learn more. And where are those strategic places where people go and they can get that information, right? Because not everybody's going to go on our very small agency's website and download all our reports and read them from beginning to end. So yeah, we're looking for those types of ideas as well. So thank you for sharing that.
My first thought was if you could go into the grocery stores and take all of those things that are pollinator dependent and take them out of the grocery store, how quickly people would become aware.
Wow.
It would be right now.
Wow.
Oh my God,
That,
where are my nuts? Where are my fruits?
I am starting to get an idea. So, like maybe we cannot do that at the grocery store, but maybe like at like an art installation that
Yeah.
simulates a grocery store, and people can come in and then just see the produce that are not pollinator dependent, and then all the ones that are pollinator dependent are no longer there, and then people will be like, oh, that would be interesting. Okay, thank you. You're full of great ideas.
Well, I'll tell you what, me and pollinators, we've been buddies for a long time. I try to keep
Oh, that's
my
great to
my
hear.
land just as is and try to encourage. I've increased the number of milkweed plants for the monarchs, but
Hmm.
just those are not alone. I also grow monarda and several other native plants that I'm hoping that will encourage bumblebees and bats and
Yeah.
all of the rest to take.
Yeah. That's
But
really sweet to hear. It always encourages me when I hear people, talking to me about their gardens and how they're gone through a transformation from maybe a full like just lawn to having native plants and incorporating these amazing, they're also really beautiful flowering plants,
oh,
and just looking through the window and seeing the wide diversity of little animals that are attracted to this. So that's really encouraging.
We're talking with Rebecca Gutierrez Moreno. She is the state pollinator coordinator with the Environmental Quality Board, and Mark Jacobs also joining us, a producer for this new segment on KEXE, The Decline of Pollinators. Rebecca, what about your garden?
Yeah, I live in a condo, so I am planning on putting pots. That's what I want to do. And actually, I have great news because I was just assigned a community garden plot. So I'm very excited about, planting some, fruits and like mainly veggies that flower at different times during the growing season, and I'm excited to see what pollinators would come and pollinate my veggies. And
But
yeah, but I don't
pot,
have a garden. Boo.
yeah,
But yeah.
but pots can also help.
Yeah. So actually, ooh, this is very exciting because that's something that sometimes people don't know, that even little things can help. So the Board of Water and Soil Resources, which is also part of the interagency pollinator protection team, Bowser, they have created a pollinator toolkit, and you can just Google it, and then people can look there. And they have lots of ideas and resources on how to plant pollinator friendly plants in small spaces. So even if you have a roof, or if you have a balcony, and you have a pot, and usually they require sun, so if it's sun facing, or if you can supplement that. But yeah, even little spaces can help pollinators, and you would be surprised of them coming and looking at what comes to your flowers, even if they're in a balcony. Yeah, so I did it last year. Not all my plants emerged because I don't get great sun. So I'm trying to be strategic this year about that. But yeah, that's
I
a
was
that's a good
approved this
point.
year for go ahead. I was approved this year for a lawns to legumes grant. So
Wow, good.
I'm
Yeah,
I'm working
congratulations.
on that right now. I've done a bunch of projects as well, but I thought, I'll give it a shot, and I was approved, so I'll get a little financial help doing it.
Yeah, Mark,
Um,
tell us what that is.
well, it's a program through the Board of Soil and Water Resources that helps individual landowners um, with a grant to do some native plantings, and it pays up to $350, I think.
Great.
So
Can
if it
you
helps,
can you name some of the legumes for those of us that might just want to go out and harvest some seeds off of some out in the woods, maybe?
I'll let the expert do that.
I am not sure I'm completely informed about the specific legume plants. I know that they encourage native seeds, and that the flowers that you've talked about, John, like milkweeds, and um monardas and different other species. But they have they do have like catalogs where you can see, what, not catalog, how would I say, a list of species that that are adapted to this region, that are native to this region, and that you know you can think strategically of where to put them according to your space. And they also, I think, provide resources, so like guidance through like master gardeners, or people that are getting the training through the Lawns Legumes program, to figure out, to provide that assistance to people that are the grantees, that are getting those grants, and that require that guidance, and so that it's just you know that is as successful as possible.
Mark,
It's
I think
really handy too that they have a seasonality too, to make sure that what you're planting is blooming throughout the growing season rather than just one and done. So that's really helpful, I think.
Yeah, it occurred to me when you were talking about pots and plants, oftentimes really early, especially in seasons where the spring might be late in arriving or really early in arriving, and a lot of the insects are out of phase with that. It's often if you can get a plant and maybe force it indoors and then put it outdoors when the time comes, you can have flowers available for those really early arriving insects, and that can be very beneficial. It can mean the difference between life and death for bumblebees.
Yeah, absolutely.
That queen needs a lot of energy, and she needs to be able to get it in a hurry because she's got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the animals that are under threat that we are watching that are going to be in trouble if we don't come to their aid?
Yeah, so in addition, to the monarch butterfly, that there's ginormous group, number of people counting numbers down in Mexico right now, and that count larvae and eggs up over here during their mating season. We have the rusty patch bumblebee, but also we have the Dakota skipper. So this is a butterfly, and the Minnesota Zoo, who is also part of the IPPT of our interagency team. They have a great conservation program for the Dakota skipper. They basically go to the field, or initially, when they started their program, go to the field, collect um, uh, specimens, and then they rear them in their facilities, and they try to get their numbers up, and then they do releases during the summer. um, so they're trying to reintroduce them to their native habitat, and that is one of the challenges, because the habitat of the Dakota skipper is a prairie, and we have very, the amount of prairie, I think now, is 1% of what it used to be in Minnesota. So the zoo, when they do the releases, they have to be very strategic about where to find the best place to release the adults, and just to make sure that they're going to be safe, and be able to repopulate. So that's a really cool program that the zoo has, and a lot of people don't know that. They're also working on Powashik skipperling. This is a different skipper butterfly, and this one hasn't been recorded in Minnesota for the past several years. I don't know exactly the number, but it's presumed to no longer be in Minnesota. Apparently, there's just a small population in Michigan, and so the zoo is working in collaboration with people in Michigan, and I think also in Canada, to rear the species that is definitely endangered, and reintroduce them to their habitat as well. Other species that haven't been found in Minnesota, and this is mainly butterflies that I've known, are the Cardinal blue butterfly hasn't been recorded in Minnesota for the longest time. I think there's still been records of them in Wisconsin, I think. There's the auto skipper, the Unca skipper, the Orlis Arctic butterfly, and I think right now the biological survey was focused on bees, but I think there's the need to do a big survey on butterfly species, and then after that would maybe be another on beetles. So for us to have the information about what other species need protection, and updating those lists, as soon as possible.
Well, I'm sorry to say we are out of time. This has been the first in our conversations for our new series, The Decline of Native Pollinators. Thanks so much to Rebecca Gutierrez Moreno and Mark Jacobs for your time today. This conversation, along with our student phenology reports, will be available at our website, kaxe.org. Thanks so much, you guys.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
both of
Thank
you.
you.
Coming up, we are on the river with Paul Kivy. Make sure you stay tuned.